Hey, I'm Andrew Hagar, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious Podcast.
The Brutally Delicious Podcast.
Good. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Where are you at? You're out in LA?
No, I'm actually up in the Bay, like near Oakland.
Oh, okay. Is it nice out there today?
It's beautiful. How about yourself? Where are you at?
I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. We're getting some of that smokiness from Canada, so it's a little odd.
Ooh. Oh, man. Yeah, kind of spooky, huh?
Yeah, it's not like New York where I've seen the pictures where it's all yellow, but you can feel it in the air, and you know something's not right.
Yeah.
If that
Right
makes
on.
sense.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, we get like crazy fires out here every year, and it's kind of like that.
Right, you guys
Looks
are
like
used
you're
to
in,
that. Right.
You know, like Mordor or something. Yeah.
Do you ever get used to that, or is that something you just kind of have to breathe through and just make it?
Yeah, you kind of got to just, I mean, I hate to say you get used to it because it shouldn't be a normal occurrence, right?
Right.
But every year it's just about the same thing. I remember 2020 was like the worst it had been in years. There was like about a week or two straight where you go outside and it literally looked like more from Lord of the Rings or something. Like everything was just had this weird orange glow. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
and
no, it's not that bad here, so I'm complaining about nothing. Sorry.
No. That's funny.
I feel bad complaining because it's just hazy, but that's all I've got. So
Yeah, but you guys don't normally get it, you know what I mean?
No,
so
no.
yeah.
So anyway, let's talk about you. Systematic Minds came out probably a month ago now, a month and a half ago.
Yeah, just about a month, I think.
What's been the response to it so far?
It's been great so far. I mean, it seems like every time I put out new music, you know, I get new fans that are just finding out about me for the first time and getting a really good response from everybody. You know, it's always satisfying when other people like your music.
You're right. But how much of that? So here's a question for you, then, not intended. But how much of that do you take to heart? So I mean, everybody's a keyboard warrior now these days, right? And you put your stuff out there, and everybody can just say stuff and maybe not even listen to it. Probably. Do you take any of that into consideration, or you don't even care?
I used to. I mean, when I first started putting out music around 2016, 2017, I was really sensitive about it because, you know, at heart, I'm an artist and I'm trying to express myself and my emotions through my music. So people coming and just trying to, you know, rip me to smithereens, that's not very appreciated. But, you know, I've got pretty thick skin and I just kind of learned to compartmentalize all that stuff. Like most of the people who leave negative comments, they probably didn't listen to the song.
That's what I was thinking. Right? They don't even,
you know, anything about me. And I've always, even before I started releasing music, I used to get a lot of hate on the internet from like, you know, whatever, Van Halen fans and people who don't like my father and all that stuff. So it's like, again, if you're going to come onto a complete stranger's page on the internet and try to, you know, talk poorly about this person, like whatever, man, get it. Yeah, exactly. You know, get a life, get a hobby, get something that, you know, allows you to put positivity out there and enrich your community and the world, you know?
I 100% agree. So you mentioned it was later on my list, but we'll go aad and breach the topic now. What is it like growing up as the son of rock royalty, I guess is the best way to put it?
I mean, it was a mixed bag. Certainly there's a lot of beautiful things that have come out of it, a lot of advantages I've been afforded that maybe other people wouldn't have, and opportunities and all that stuff. But it's also been a difficult thing in certain ways because, like I said, people judge you completely based on things that have nothing to do with you. People have already formulated an opinion on me, whether they've met me or not, or before they've even heard anything about me, you know? So in that respect, it's been a bit challenging. It also, growing up, was kind of difficult to know who my real friends were. So I started basically cultivating this defense mechanism where like I just wouldn't tell people. So for a long time through college, most of my best friends had no idea who my father was for like 4 years or so.
Which is
now,
weird, right?
Yeah, it's a little weird, right? Yeah, but I mean nowadays it's difficult for anyone to have any sense of anonymity unless they're not on socials, and obviously, being an artist, you got to be on social.
You have to be, right? I hate it, but it's part of the gig, so it is what it is. Do you feel any? One more question on that, and then we'll move on to your stuff. But do you feel any sort of pressure to live up to a certain standard, or does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't feel any sort of pressure anymore. When I first started releasing music, I was doing it under different project titles that weren't my own name because of that kind of pressure. I didn't want to be put under a microscope in that sense. So I was hoping to kind of like figure out where I was going, what artistic direction I wanted to move in without having that kind of pressure. But now I'm just like, I'm doing me, and, everybody's going to lump me in a certain place, whatever, man. It's like, can't get away from it. So I don't really feel that pressure anymore. I'm just doing me.
Good for you. So when
Thank
you're
you.
writing, I mean, I know you're incredibly positive guy. So when you're writing, is there a message you want your fans to take away from, like after listening to an Andrew Hagar record or Red Light, Appetite, or any of that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always trying to, put little tidbits about mental health in there anywhere that I can. And most of this record that I did with Trev Lukather is all about, mental health topics, my friends, my family, things that we've been through, things that we've suffered through.
Right.
And some songs are more about like the way that I've overcome it, and I never want to be too like heavy handed with how I'm approaching things, or like too on the nose with lyrics. Like, I love when people lyrically put a little mystery in there and let the listener kind of come up with their own, intention or reason for what the song is about. But yeah, so I do when I'm writing stuff, I'm always trying to think about what I'm trying to say. And a lot of times I might not really know what I'm trying to say until the song is done and out. And I listen to it a couple times, and I'm like, oh, this totally makes sense.
Really?
Absolutely. I mean, like, I have a certain intention going into it. I journal a lot. I write a lot just to try to organize my thoughts. And when I'm in the studio writing lyrics, I oftentimes pull from things that I've been writing about consistently over the last, few months or few weeks before I go in there. But that's like kind of a blueprint for what it is. And then like a lyrical detective afterwards, I'm going in there and kind of trying to suss out what the hell I was exactly trying to say,
Right. So I think, we're sticking with this positive thing. I think, we talk about mental health a lot on this show, and I've actually done a documentary on, mental health in the heavy metal world, and we talk about it a lot. It comes
Very
up.
cool.
I dig your positivity, and I'm wondering, do you feel any sort of or sense of responsibility to the listener to drive home a message? And also, on the same token, how do I phrase this? I guess let's go with that. Do you feel any sort of responsibility to the listener?
Yeah, I mean, I feel responsibility not just to a listener, but to anybody that is going to see or hear what I'm doing, because I don't know. I just feel like people who can articulate their feelings well, who can articulate, the views that a lot of people might not be able to express, they have a responsibility to talk about this stuff and say it for the people that are either not heard or don't know how to say it,
Right.
So, I mean, I do have the blessing of having an extra microscope on me, an extra bit of attention because of, my father and the TV show and all this stuff. So again, every time I get an opportunity, I'm trying to talk about it, whether I'm bringing awareness, to the overall world of mental health and how the conversation is changing now, especially for men. But also just as someone who suffered through it and found a lot of really beneficial tools to navigate these issues, I feel like it's my duty to talk about it, because you never know who can hear that and benefit from it.
And the biggest tool of all, I think, at least in my book, when struggling, has been music, right? I mean, whether it's happy music or just music in general, it has a way of getting you through. And the bonus is that, if I connect with your lyrics, it helps me know that I'm not alone, or the listener's not alone, right?
Absolutely. And that's the most important thing. It's such a almost kind of like done to death point now that you're not alone, but like it can't be understated how important that is when you're in the midst of any sort of crisis.
I was going to say, it may be done to death, but it's not really relevant or in the front of your head when you're in the depths or in the pit, right?
Absolutely. And that's the most important part, because for someone who's never really experienced a mental health crisis, they might think that sounds cheesy, but it's not cheesy at all when you're in the moment and you do feel absolutely alone. And all the things that are going to help you, going outside, talking to friends, exercising, going to therapy, all that stuff is the absolute last thing that you feel motivated to do at that moment. So yeah, a lot of times commiserating through lyrics or through music is one of the most helpful things to pull yourself out of some type of spiral,
Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent, but like I said,
No,
we
you're
talk
fine.
about that a lot here, and it's very interesting. One last one on that topic. Do you ever find that you
Sure.
put too much of yourself into a song and you're too vulnerable?
I used to when I was writing more like acoustic or folk singer songwriter style music. I did feel like maybe I was putting too much of myself into it, but I don't think you're ever really putting too much of yourself into it. If you look at artists who are really successful in that sphere now, it's the people who are like bearing their entire soul through
Honest,
their
right?
songs, right? Super honest, and even it's like I've talked to some people when I was writing for Sync and stuff as part of like a production team. They were saying like, "Oh, make things purposefully vague. You want people to apply their own meaning to it." But like, we'll use Phoebe Bridgers as an example, somebody that's incredibly talented and getting massively popular, and also has a lot of integrity as a songwriter. She's so specific with so many of her lyrics. It's like, oh, how would someone relate to this? It's the fact that she is so specific and bearing her soul that makes her so relatable.
And
So
99% of the time, I'm sure there's somebody out there who's experienced, going to experience, or going through it at the moment, right?
most definitely. Yeah.
Excellent. So when you're releasing records, are you gonna be doing the single model, like the new business model of a single every 4 to 6 weeks, or are you doing a full length?
Yeah, I mean, I've been releasing singles pretty, steadily
Right.
here for the last few months, and I'm going to continue doing that for the rest of the year. I do have an EP that's scheduled to come out at the end of this month. Been waiting on my cover art for a minute. I have a tremendous designer friend who does incredible art, but he resides in Italy, and things move a little different out there.
Yeah,
You
I
know what
imagine so.
But yeah, we have the first of what I thought was going to be two EPs being released later this month. It's called Limited Edition Psycho, and it deals with a lot of mental health stuff. So, but after that, yeah, I'll probably go back to singles for a little while. I do have a full length record that I was planning on releasing, but just with the climate, the way things are working right now, it doesn't seem like a good idea for me to
Right.
release that with just, my little pendant budget. You feel me?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I
So
know
if I
that
could get
people like my son consume music way differently than I grew up, because I grew up in the era of the record
Definitely.
and the way you sequenced it and the way it's
Yeah,
the story you told by the sequencing, and that's kind of lost, I think.
it's a lost art, yeah. And I mean, I think that there are people out there that still consume music that way. I mean, the fact that the vinyls are still moving
Yeah.
the way they're moving, speaks a lot to the fact that people still want to hear things sequenced a certain way. And like you said, the story that's being told. I grew up in the same way, and I still listen to a full length record start to finish. Like if one of my favorite bands puts out a new LP,
Right.
I'm going to sit there and listen to the whole thing. And I love looking at the art. I love reading liner notes. I love the whole experience of consuming a
Yes.
record, because it's a piece of art, and that's how the artist wanted you to experience it. And
Right.
how you interpret it, of course, is your own thing. But yeah, I think it's a lost art form, and for the most part, for independent artists, it can be really challenging to come up
And
with like
expensive, like you said.
the budget. That's really what kills it. Like if I had a bigger budget, I would have released a couple records by now,
Right.
as opposed to just smaller EP offerings and single. But it is what it is. I'll release a full length record eventually, one of these days.
Nice. Are you planning on taking yourself out on the road?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been playing a smattering of local shows throughout California with my band, and we're going to continue to play, some more local offerings throughout the year. But the way everything moves in the music industry, you have to book pretty far out, and we're working on some really big stuff for 2024. Opening up for a much bigger artist again. Like I can't announce anything officially yet, but yeah, there will be a much bigger offering in terms of the touring for later on this year, I think, and then also mostly for 2024.
That's good, because that's another thing that has kind of changed dramatically, right? The whole touring climate is so effed up.
It's so messed up, man. I mean, like people ask all the time, like even just fans on my, my socials and stuff, like, "Oh, when are you touring? When are you coming to Florida? When are you coming here? When are you coming there?" And I'm like, man, if I was
Right.
had a
Had the
huge budget,
right.
man, I'd be all over the place. If I was independently wealthy, I would just buy, Sprinter van, get my van and my band together, and like just go out. But unfortunately, contrary to what most people think, I'm not massively wealthy, and it's very difficult to tour, especially as a solo artist. Like if you're with a band, everybody's equal parts, and you're going out there and splitting everything you do. It makes more sense. But as like a solo artist that has to like pay their band and stuff too, it's pretty expensive to play shows.
So as a solo artist, then you're doing all the writing yourself and then taking it to the band. Is that how that works?
Yeah, actually, so Trev Lukather, my producer and co-writer, I wrote all of these songs that I'm offering currently with Trev. I mostly did the lyrics and the melody. Trev did a lot of the music, but prior to doing that, yeah, I wrote everything myself, recorded and produced everything myself, and brought in a few friends to play stuff that I was like not musically talented enough to play. But no, yeah, that's just kind of how I've done things from the beginning. I've been mostly a solo artist, and it's been really great to work with Trev because, again, like sonically, he brings something to the table that I'm not necessarily capable of, and especially from a production standpoint. So that's been a really awesome thing and something that that I was not used to doing. So it's been a nice little way to get out of the
Did you find it difficult turning over your baby and letting him have his way?
No, not at all, because we wrote everything in-house together. So like he would come up with, an instrumental demo or something or rough, and I'll listen to it. And if I like the vibe, then we start writing, and then we write everything together. So that was great. I mean, I've worked with producers before where I've given them my music and had them like, gussy it up a little bit. And that's been great, but it's really hard to find a producer that really understands you and your vibe. And I get why so many artists want to do everything themselves, because there's a certain vision you have for the sound. You hear it in your head, and it's difficult to tell someone and articulate exactly what you want. Like I've tried that before, and nobody's been able to nail what I was doing, And like,
maybe that's a solo artist thing, because I think as a band, the producer probably is a better route because he's sort of like the moderator or the mediator between the five people, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and when you're writing all together in a band, look at a guy like Dave Cobb, for instance. Like Dave Cobb is known for he'll write some songs with people, he'll play guitar on stuff. Like when my pops did a record with him, that was kind of how it was working. But he's kind of known for bringing out the best of a band. A guy like Ruben, same thing. He self-admittedly doesn't really play any instruments. He doesn't really, work the board. He doesn't really do a lot of things that a traditional producer or musician would do, but he's able to coax out, the best a lot of these bands
Rick Rubin?
bring out there. Yeah, Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
But, he's an interesting guy in the music industry because most producers are like a specialist at one or two instruments. They really have a command and a mastery of something. Whereas Rick Rubin, like I said, and self-admittedly, doesn't really have a lot of musical expertise in terms of playing an instrument, but obviously he's able to coax out the best. Yeah. And, and he's a tremendously respected guy for a good reason, whereas Dave Cobb is like the opposite end of that. Like he is an incredible guitar player, incredible songwriter, and an incredible producer, and has a way of coaxing out the best of artists as well.
I've seen videos online. I don't know Rick Rubin at all, but I've seen videos online where like he's in his bedroom or something in his yoga pants listening to the studio takes, and he knows exactly what he's looking for. And
he's cool, man. His story is really, really interesting. Big
I
fan
imagine, right? Because he's worked with everybody from Slayer to Johnny Cash to you name it.
Yeah. And he started off as kind of like a punk dude that was, listening to like early rap and hip hop and trying to help them kind of get off. He was
part of Def Jam, right?
I believe so. I'm not.
Yeah, I think early on he was like some connection to Def Jam as well.
Yeah, sure.
Interesting. Yeah. So what's next for you then? What do you got going on this summer?
Like I said, we're releasing the EP, some new singles, going to play a few shows here and there, and just keep it moving, man.
And if fans want to find you, how do they find you online?
The best place to find me is on Instagram. I'm on TikTok and Facebook as well. It's at Andrew Hagar Official, but I'm definitely the most active on Instagram.
There's too many of those to keep up with, and I feel like every other day there's a new one to try and do. I can't.
Certainly. Yeah, it's a lot.
Budget as well. I'd love to have somebody to be able to take care of all that for me, but
same. You and me both.
I'm in the same boat as you, sort of. Anyway, I think I ran up to the end of my questions. Did I miss anything you wanted to cover?
No, we got it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't too bad. I like to meander and just see where we end up.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's a good conversation, man.
Thank you, my friend. I really like the record, or what I've heard of it anyway.
Awesome.
I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate you.
Be well.
Have
Good
a
luck.
wonderful day.
All right,
Bye.
cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.